Here we go. Okay, so this is the Lead Democratic Committee meeting for May, and I'm going to read some part of an email that Amanda had sent out earlier, basically describing what's going on tonight. It's the agenda, and I know there are one or two changes that we've got from when she wrote this, and I'll spell that out at the end. So here we go. She says, I am very excited about our May meeting, so mark your calendars and make sure you attend. Our guest speakers are Clifton West Jr., Emily Kim A. Son Hunter, and Rep. Gerri Cannon. Clifton is a software developer at Lincoln Financial Group, one of the founding members of Black Lives Matter Seacoast, and recently voted VP with NHYD. Emily is a director of CX research and design at John Hancock, but also was featured on seacoastonline.com for being the rally organizer for #StopAsianHate, which will take place May in Portsmouth. Rep. Cannon is a New Hampshire state rep for Somersworth and Rollinsford, Somersworth School Board member, senior marketing consultant, and Master Carpenter. They will each have 20 minutes to talk about their work with BLM, #StopAsianHate, the trans community, and how the Lead Dems can help. This is an amazing panel, so have your questions ready. So I know that the two changes that I know about, at least, is that Emily is going to go first, and we are also going to have, and then once Emily has finished, Susan Mayer is going to have a few words for us because she was recently elected or re-elected to the Stratford County Democratic Committee. With that being said, I will ask for Emily to go first so she can enlighten us all.
Hi everyone, so nice to meet you. I'm so sorry. I requested to go first because I actually got my appendix taken out 2 days ago. So I am still on the mend, but I didn't want to miss this meeting, so I made sure that I was here for it. I do have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old at home, so life's been a bit crazy, but I have adequate family here to help to make sure that I can be here. So thank you so much for having me. I was, just a little bit of background, I was born in Seoul, South Korea with my identical twin sister. We were separated at birth. And back in the 80s, it was easier to separate siblings because it made us more adoptable. So we went to separate foster homes. And then my parents today, they wanted siblings. So the agency put us back together and we came to the United States when we were 5 months old. I was known as K88 1901. They didn't give us names at the time. And she was K88 1902. So we came to Boston Logan Airport together on a plane with 12 other adoptees that I still see. We meet every Christmas for kind of a Christmas adoption agency party. So yeah, my experience is a little strange. I grew up in a very much 98% Caucasian state. My whole family is white. My son is half white. My husband is white. My friends and coworkers are white. And I've loved my life, but I did experience a lot of trauma growing up. So I apologize if I get a little bit emotional. I'm still working through all this, but my first experience that my mom reminds me of, or has told me about, is when I was 6 months old. She was pushing us around in the mall, and a woman came up to her and said, "Oh, do they speak Chinese?" And my mom said, "Actually, they're 6 months old. They don't speak at all, and they're Korean." And we used to joke about that growing up, but now as I'm older, I kind of see it in a different light, given the circumstances. In high school, I filed my first hate crime. So somebody spray painted the word chink on my sister and I's driveway in New Hampshire in big yellow letters. The police had to come. We were very embarrassed, obviously, and we had to go through the steps of a hate crime, which I'm sure most of you know, there's really not a protocol for hate crimes. Police don't really know how to act on that and follow up on it. So nothing really ever came from it, but it's a memory that I have. My high school teacher, she was a history teacher. My sister and I have Italian last names, and she did roll call on the first day of school, and we said, "Here, And she said, oh, I thought I was getting some nice Italian girls. I didn't realize I was getting 2 Orientals, which is super embarrassing when you're that age, of course. So these are just memories that I have growing up. You know, now that I'm older, I often, before COVID, I pick up food at like Asian restaurants and be wearing, you know, my black pantsuit because I am in a corporate job and I'm very proud of that. I'm in a leadership role. But people would come up to me often and say, you know, where's the bathroom? Or can you come bring me water? Thinking that I just live or I just, you know, work there. My husband and I have been together for about 13 years now. When we started dating, his friends and our friends and others would make jokes like, oh, do you have an Asian fetish, or, you know, why are you dating an Asian girl? So those are all things that have kind of shaped sort of like where I am today. So my twin sister and I are very close. She lives with me. And she was assaulted in Florida. 2 strangers called her a chink and they beat her up, gave her black eyes. She had bruises all over her body. We had to come up with a story for her daughter, my niece, who's 7, that she was in a car accident, to make sure that we didn't scar her or make her feel, you know, uncomfortable or scared. And then the shootings happened, and it just, I've always been into DEI. I've always worked really hard at making sure that I have these conversations and I share education and resources with people. But that was kind of like the last straw for me. Like, you know, like, do I have to be murdered and like killed to like what do you want from me? So I decided that I was going to do a peaceful gathering in Portsmouth because I grew up in New Hampshire and I lived in the Seacoast throughout college, in Rye, Exeter, Dover, Durham, all those areas. And I love Portsmouth. So I decided, okay, let's have like maybe 50 people come. That's my goal. And then I can raise $1,000 for AAPI nonprofit groups. Since then, which was a couple months ago, we are at $7,000 for the GoFundMe for AAPI nonprofit groups. And there's probably about 200 plus people coming on Sunday to Portsmouth for the peaceful gathering. It was featured in the Foster Daily Democrat, Seacoast Online, Portsmouth Herald. I met with several members of Congress a couple weeks ago to talk about the gathering. Maggie Hassan named me the Granite State Award for this past month. And, you know, I've been very lucky that I've been able to meet with several news stations like WMUR to talk about this stuff. And whenever somebody asks me, like, you know, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you doing this? Kind of comes down to the fact that I was raised in a privileged situation where my family is white and I am very confident. And there are so many Asian people that I'm friends with that keep their head down and they try and just fit that model minority prototype and they don't feel comfortable saying what they want to feel. And so I feel like it's as uncomfortable as it is for me to talk about these experiences and the trauma that I've had in my life.
Emily, you're on mute.
Sorry. So I was just saying that even though it's uncomfortable and traumatic to like go through this stuff, I feel it's important for me to speak on behalf of other Asian Americans that might not have the same privilege that I've had to feel that they can voice how they feel and have the platform that I have to bring their voice to light. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, even though it's uncomfortable. I just think it's the right thing to do. Sorry. That's it.
You're so lucky
Emily,
to have you.
thank-
sh- sh- share that story with us. Thank you so much. Sorry, Eric, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. I think we were just going to about to say the exact same thing. So that's fine. Emily, thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have any questions for Emily?
Yeah, Emily, thanks for sharing. That was wonderful. Well, it wasn't wonderful, but it was important to hear. Can you tell us more about the event on Sunday?
Yeah, of course. So it starts at 1 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at Prescott Park. I literally started this whole event with, I think a year or two ago, I was walking in Portsmouth doing some shopping with my family, going out to eat, and I saw a Trump rally there in Market Square. And I kept thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like, you know, there was, you know, contention, whatever, there were people, signs. And I'm like, oh, how do you even just like hold something like that? So a couple of months ago, I called the committee, the Portsmouth committee, like their town office, and spoke to the police department. And they gave me a list of places that we were able to peacefully gather. And so Prescott Park is an area that's really large. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't come off too strong to people and be kind of like in the way. I know that's so messed up because I've been working with like a therapist and other people of color, like BIPOC communities, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't have to feel X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, I know. But I really wanted to make sure that I held this first peaceful gathering in a way that was comfortable for a lot of non-BIPOC communities, because I know it takes a lot to get them there. And I don't know if that's right or wrong. So I don't care. I just want to get people there so they can hear. So it starts at 1, and then I ordered 60 t-shirts that say Stop Asian Hate. I've been tie-dyeing them all week. My hands are literally like stained. And then I ordered 60 face masks and hand sanitizer. Def Jam, the like recording studio from California, they heard about it. I don't know how, but they sent me 100 masks in the mail. So I have 160 masks total. I ordered 5 cases of water, snacks. I have name tags for everyone. Those are comfortable, Sharpies, so we can network after. I'm looking over here because all my stuff's over here. And so it starts at 1, and then I'll kick it off. We have microphones. My friend Michael, who is also adopted from Korea, is going to be a speaker after I kind of kick it off. He's going to share his own experiences and kind of his history with doing these types of events. Everyone will get a map, and we're going to spread out into a couple locations in Portsmouth so we don't overwhelm folks in one area. They'll stand there for maybe 30 to 40 minutes. I've made about 20 signs, and hoping that others will bring signs. And then people come back, and I have, again, water and snacks. And then I have some gift baskets for folks that have helped me along the way. Some Stop Asian Hate candles, you know, little things like that, from friends that are donating things to this event. And then I'm hoping we can network, and people will feel that they've taken something from being in groups with people they don't know / hearing speakers, and maybe they'll feel more comfortable with branching out and meeting new folks. And again, this is something that's going to be more along the lines of education. So signs that say things like, you know, do you have children and you're trying to talk about race? Here's a resource that can help. Facts, because no one can argue with facts. So, you know, 149% increase in hate crimes in the last year for Asian Americans. So I'm not trying to upset anyone or, you know, cause a big thing. I really just want to educate and share resources, and that's sort of my mission for this event.
Great, thanks.
I mean, if you have any anything as far as like links or anything else that you'd like to share with us in the chat, please do so. I also know, I thought I saw Clifton unmute earlier. I didn't know if you had a question or a comment as well.
Not a question, just a comment, because I know Emily has to go soon. I definitely appreciate you sharing your story. I know doing this organizing the rally, all that is so like mentally, emotionally so draining. um, and I mean, I definitely appreciate you stepping up and doing what you felt like you needed to do, and it's very much needed in this Seacoast area. So just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you, Clifton. My last thought is I do have a son who is 3, and I just don't want him to have to go through some of the stuff that my twin and I had to go through growing up. So if I have to like be vulnerable in front of people, I don't mind. I mean, it's not the best. I don't love it. But I just want him to have the best life, and I just don't want him to be subjected to some of the stuff that we've gone through. And unfortunately, in this political climate, I'll just say climate in general, hate is so real, and it's the worst it's ever been. And so whatever I can do to make it better, or help, or bring those topics to light for people to talk about, I'm okay with doing. So that's kind of my last little piece.
He's an incredibly lucky kid, and I hope you take up as much space as you can in this world, because you deserve every bit of it. I'm sorry, empathy. But I'm really excited about what you're doing, and he's gonna see that, and you're making change. That's so huge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Save the newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
Please
he's
save those.
older and he's like, I hate you, Mom, you're so embarrassing. I'm gonna be like, look what I did for you.
So Emily, this is Sue here. I found that very moving, and I'm so glad you're doing this. My mom, well, we're Jewish, and my mom in the, I guess it probably was around 1930, for years, she would tell the story. She must have been very traumatized by it, of being beaten up on the way to school, to and from school. Now, my mom literally looked like Shirley Temple. I mean, curling blonde hair and blue eyes. But, you know, she was Jewish, right? And so that's sort of the opposite sort of thing. It wasn't, you know, pointing out somebody who looked different. She didn't. And it totally traumatized her. And this is just not right. This, it's unfortunate, it's worse than unfortunate that this country has such a long history of doing this to people who are considered minority. And what, we're all Americans. It's just shameful. So thank you for organizing this and highlighting it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So since everything went public with the Congress stuff and the newspaper articles and everything about the gathering, I wake up to probably 10 to 15 like hateful messages on Facebook a day, on threads tagging me, on the Seacoast Online, on, you know, all these things like about how it's disgusting that I would ever have children because I'm infecting the white race with my disgusting Asianness. I'm a disgrace to New Hampshire. I should die. I'm a commie. I am an American, so how dare I talk about being Korean and want to bring my culture and my race here? Because I should have given that right up when I became an American. I mean, it's every day, it's nonstop. But I will say, I'm at the point in my life in my 30s now that I'm like, those just fuel me. Like, I'm just ready to just get stuff done. Like, I'm over letting these people make me feel just horrible and making me like shrink back into myself and keep my head down and be silent. And I'm very, very grateful that I'm at the point in my life where I'm just like, I'm just over it. My son is here, you know, my twin who got assaulted. Like, I have to stand up for people. And so that's it, you know. 10 years ago, those messages, which I still would have gotten, would have like made me retreat into myself and want to die and literally be like, oh my God, like, who am I? And now they just keep me going. They just make me see that there's a problem. There has always been a problem, and I've been aware of that, but this problem is very real. It's not getting any better. And so what can I do to have some sort of impact, if anything? And I'm going to do it. So.
Emily, thanks again for sharing, and I hope everything goes as well as it possibly can for you. And obviously that includes your appendix surgery.
Thank you. Yeah, and I don't know if I can actually send anything in this chat. I don't know if there's like chat. I've used Zoom, but I don't see like a chat ability. But I can definitely send out the links, or you can just Google Emily Hunter, maybe like Portsmouth Gathering. It should show up. But yeah, I'll send out what I can to the email chain that I have, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for letting me go first.
You're welcome. You're welcome. There is a chat button at the bottom of the Zoom window. If you don't see that, you might try Alt-H as a keyboard shortcut.
Bring your
but if
cursor to
neither
the
of those
bottom.
works, then by all means use any one of those methods that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Thank
Awesome.
you for everything. Thank you for everything you're doing, Emily. Been there. It hurts sometimes.
Yeah, it hurts. Like, you know, just gotta keep on doing it. So thank you guys for having me. I hope I get to meet you guys in real life soon. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Sunday, 1 o'clock, we all get to meet you.
Yeah. We'll show her. We'll just show up, be there.
Okay. So next, Sue Mayer, I think we're gonna have you say a few words about your recent election.
Well, hi, everybody. Last night was the Stratford County caucus, and I ran for one of the at-large positions and won. So this is good for the lead Democrats because you have a direct voice to me, to the committee through me. Anything that you need the committee to know, you should just bring to my attention, and I'll make sure the right person deals with it. The other thing about the Stratford County Committee is that it would be really good to have somebody from the committee, from the lead Democrats, present at the county meetings other than me. I've been encouraging the county committee to invite all county Democrats to the meeting. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think that members of the town committees are always invited. And so it's, I think, a very good thing for the towns to know what's going on at the county level and to be able to bring their ideas to the county. I think we miss out on a lot of people's good ideas when they don't show up at the county meetings. That's all. I've witnessed the Rockingham County Democrats. Now, I know that the reason that they invite everybody to their meetings is that they have a lot of towns with no town committees for obvious reasons, since it's such a Republican county, except with a few glaring exceptions. But I've witnessed how well that works. I mean, when they were actually meeting in person, you know, to kind of get to know each other and be able to work together on different matters that are important to the Rockingham Democrats. It's just useful. And if people don't come to these county meetings, that won't happen. So I'm going to keep fighting for that, for at least the county, the town officials, Democratic officials being invited. And yeah, I don't know if you agree with me, but I think it's important.
When are the meetings normally?
They're going to be Mondays, the third Monday of the month at 7 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
On the
Which-
non-select board days, we'll make that try to work.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I know you have a problem.
Well,
Yes.
some third Mondays I won't, so.
Yeah. No, we originally picked as a caucus date a Saturday, which is normally when we had our caucuses for Stratford County. That was when the last one was before this. But the party had other ideas and there was no changing it. So it
Congratulations.
was what it was. But I think that this new county committee seems to be very focused on the local level. And I think that's good, although balance is really important. If we hadn't focused on that Senate, US Senate seat, well, we'd be in a different place right now, wouldn't we? So it's all important. You just can't leave the local out. It's important too. And last time it was just very difficult, what with the pandemic and the inability to be in person and canvass and all that. It just made life politically enormously difficult, you know, to communicate. So hopefully this next 2 years will be different now that there's a vaccine and we can get out. I'm not certain I have much more to say. The reason I wanted to go early was because I got a tooth pulled today. So that's not as bad as having an appendix out. But I wasn't sure how that was going to feel by the end of this. That's all. That's all I've got. Does anybody have any questions or? Oh. Okay.
Not this
Well, then
time,
I'm
maybe
done.
next time.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Sue, for all of that and for running and winning. Okay, next on our list is Clifton. Clifton, please unmute yourself and tell us all what we need to know.
I don't know if I have all that information, but I guess I should probably start. So a little bit about myself. I'm not from New Hampshire originally. I'm from Texas, born into a military family. Then we settled in, by the time I went to elementary school, we ended up in North Carolina, Fort Bragg, which is the biggest army base in US. And the rest of my family, they're pretty much from Remington, North Carolina, which is coastal region. And that's pretty much where my granddad lives, in Remington. His dad, actually his dad was a sharecropper, which, if you're not familiar with sharecropping, it was a practice of someone living on the land, taking care of the crops. But also the person who owned the land will, well, sorry, I think I said that in reverse. The person who owns the land will let someone live on the land to take care of the crops and pay them wherever. And it was actually an interesting documentary made about sharecropping in North Carolina that I can share out though this call. I think I think a couple of my family members was interviewed for that documentary, so it was very interesting then to kind of see how Black sharecroppers and white sharecroppers were treated. Because sharecropping was an evolution of slavery, pretty much. But I pretty much grew up in North Carolina, grew up in a Christian, very Christian household. My uncle is a pastor. My family goes to church, went to church like every day, every day for every event, for everything. That was fun times. But I think my first experiences with, like, we talk about racism, was probably in elementary school. At least this is the one I can remember quite clearly. Back then, kids used to have a practice. Oh my God, I feel like I'm outdating myself because I talk to other kids all the time. I'm like, back then we had yearbooks, and back then we used to write, goodbye messages on yearbooks. And if you didn't have a yearbook, you had a T-shirt or you had something to say goodbye at the end of the school year on. And one of the first experiences was a kid wrote KKK on my shirt. It wasn't something that I noticed until I got home and my older brother saw it and he was like, do you know what that is? And at the time, I'm probably like 9 or something. I'm like, I don't know what that is. And we pretty much scribbled it out. And I mean, that's not something that I recognized at the time as racist, but it's something that when you reflect back and you had time to process it, you're like, wait, that wasn't that wasn't right. That should not have happened. And the things that I saw in North Carolina, and I have a different experience in New Hampshire, but the things that I saw in North Carolina growing up, you saw how redlining worked in North Carolina. You saw how we had a HBCU, and if you walked pretty much every neighborhood around that HBCU was considered a bad neighborhood, where all the BIPOC people lived in. Then you walked, I don't know, 200 yards down the street, and it's beautiful. It's Starbucks. The grass is green, and it's the right neighborhood. And you saw that in how the schools play out. The schools that was considered to be more underfunded, more crazier, and all those negative connotations was applied to the schools that had a majority Black population, opposed to the other schools that was in more wealthy neighborhoods. There was in the white neighborhoods, and I went to the school that was like more in the white neighborhood because my dad was in the Army, so he was able to buy a nicer house. But where am I going with this? So I said all racism, I didn't face it like the way I didn't face it like someone coming to me in my face and say something to me. I think, and I often, especially that doesn't even happen here in New Hampshire with me doing all the Black Lives Matter stuff. And I often ask, why do like my co-founder Tanisha, why does she get that? Why does Emily get that? Emily and Hunter, why do they get that and I don't get that? And I go, oh, it's because I'm a Black male. And Black men in this country has always been positioned as like the most threatening figures to society. So if you get positioned that way as kind of unapproachable, then no one will approach you unless they feel like they have the upper hand on you. And I'm a bigger guy, so it's not like someone's just going to approach me randomly. So a lot of the racism I face was more has been more like dog whistle type of language. And even my interactions with the police have been interesting, to say the least. I often remember the one time that my dad was pulled over, and it was just like this real moment of like, what's going to happen? And this is me as a kid, and just like, what's going to happen? I don't know what's happening. My dad's not really saying anything, and I feel like I supposed to not say anything. And I should went fine, thank God. But I had interaction like that here in New Hampshire, where officer was fine, whoever, pulled me over, checked my license, I went about my way. But after that interaction, I felt myself like shaking. Then I didn't recognize that at the time, but it was like my body was reacting like I just went through trauma. I was having a traumatic experience to this very small thing that just occurred. And to me that's because of all the everything that we see play out in the media, everything that I have heard back in North Carolina is a reason why I'm particularly against all SOs in schools. And that's because the cop in our school, in my high school, the teachers used the cop to escort kids out of the classroom. If the kid was having a bad day, for whatever reason, kids have bad days, the cop was called in. He would handcuff the student and put him and do whatever they do to him. And that's the only action that we have with this cop, to break up fights, to get kids out of classrooms. and we had a counselor, but it was like one counselor that showed up 2 days a week. That's not going to help any student, truly. So it's like all these smaller interactions that I've had with people in general. Me having a roommate in college. It wasn't my roommate. It was my dorm mate in college, and me and him having a conversation. And he was like, "You know what? You're not exactly what I expected as a dorm mate." Meaning, he knew it was going to be me as a dorm mate, me as a Black male, but he was hoping it wasn't a Black male that he perceived to be wild, thuggish, all these terms that we apply to degrade Black men. All these terms. He was hoping that that wasn't the person that he would have as a dorm mate. And sorry, I have dogs and they are very annoying sometimes. But to kind of speed this up, and that actually reminded me of something else that I want to share with this group. I actually took a equity training a couple of days ago, where we talked a lot about white dominance culture and kind of how we all play a part in the culture of white dominance and the terms that we use, the phrases that we have heard, and kind of systems that have been created to promote that culture. I thought it was very insightful. I have to send that along in the email. Because there's things that we learn as like just working as a company that we learned there. That we not realizing it, but it's a part of that culture that we need to like dismantle. But to speed all this up, because I know I've been kind of rambling on forever. Black Lives Matter Seacoast. So, man, this is probably 4 years after I moved to New Hampshire. I moved to New Hampshire out of college, straight out of college. Didn't know where New Hampshire was on the map. Fun fact. I thought it was in like Connecticut, where Connecticut was or something like that. Turns out I was very wrong about that. I was close. It was New England. But Black Lives Matter Seacoast started as a very direct response to what happened with George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and pretty much every major Black killing that occurred before them. And since that time, I've heard so many traumatic stories from like parents of Black kids. And I mean, one time we got an email saying, hey, I've been denied by 3 doctors. I have very bad leg pain, but they haven't seen me. They don't really treat me. Where can and this was a Black woman talking, where can I go to be treated? And it's even racism when we talk about hospitals, when you talk about that health system. It was a study done, I believe it was done by Harvard, that talked about that they conducted a study on doctors that was going to enter the profession the next coming months, that was about to graduate from medical school. And they found out that it was an overwhelming perception of Black women being able to endure more pain. And that plays into the statistics when you look at childbirth and how Black women are dying twice as much as white women because they're not getting the medical care that they need in that situation, and they haven't gotten the medical care that they need leading up to that situation. And I've heard stories from parents, directly from parents, talking about I have a great friend, she had to pull her daughter out of high school, because the bullying got to a point where her daughter would rather die than go back to that school. And I have a son, I have a newborn son, 3 weeks, almost 3. No, it's been almost 4 weeks old at this point. And I just think, and I have 2 stepkids as well. And I just think, as a parent, how can you, what do you do in that situation? You know, you want to provide your kids with this great education, but at the same time, they're not getting they're facing aggression, violent aggression at school, and no one's there to help. No teacher, no principal, and you feel powerless over the situation because you can't really do much besides go to the school and scream at someone. And, you know, just hearing stories from students at Dover High School, the KKK jingle incident that happened in Dover High School a few years ago, talking a lot with those students about their experiences. And it just, even with my co-founder's daughter, Tanisha, her daughter has faced that biasness with just her volleyball coach. You know, the volleyball coach being especially more tough and aggressive towards her than any other person on the team. Then you just hear these stories. You hear about the story about the Black kid a few years ago in Claremont that almost got lynched. Then it's just all these stories that you hear from kids that are like extremely heartbreaking. So I know I don't really talk about myself because for me, this movement isn't really about me specifically. It's about prepping, making sure this state is a safe space for the next generation that's going to grow up and take my place one day. Giving them the best opportunities so they don't have to face what I face, what my family face. I've heard stories from my granddad a slew amount of times about the racism that he faced in North Carolina, and from my dad who grew up underneath that civil rights leading up to that Reaganomics era, that awful Reaganomics era in this country. But I think that's why I got into politics, and I'm going to wrap this up because I know I've been going on forever. But I think coming from Black Lives Matter Seacoast, still doing that and going into politics, it's at the end of the day, a lot of these systems, a lot of these whatever have been created, maintained, and held up by laws that have been created a long time ago, or even like a year ago. But everything kind of leads back to politics. The drug laws, the policing system, education, all that stuff goes back to politics. So that's why I've taken the position that I've taken in NHYD to make sure we get candidates to get people into office, whether that's municipal, Concord, or federal, who is willing to fight for the next generation and fight for everyone, LGBTQ plus, the AAPI community, and the BIPOC community. So, okay, I'll stop.
Does anybody have a question for Clifton?
I have so many questions, but I just first want to say congratulations on your little one, and thank you for telling us, you know, your story and sharing other stories too. I know one thing I really want to do in this town is help open up some doors so that people feel that they do have, you know, the right to run for these positions. And you know, I'm excited that that's what you're focused on too. So I will keep an eye open for anything you can share or that you are working on. I would really like to be aware of it or involved, however it can be.
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as NHYD, we do have the Tri-City Young Dems will be spun back up. That's something that I'm actually directly involved in right now.
Great.
And we definitely trying to spin that back up to get more young people in this area to run for office, because we have so many young progressives. This is the Tri-Cities is becoming the home base for a lot of progressive organizations. So a lot of progressive young organizations. So that's something that we definitely want to channel into electoral, getting people elected. Whether the school board, select boards, city council, I don't care.
Yeah.
Getting people into these positions that have been held by like 40-year incumbents or something crazy like that. So the young people of the future, we have to make that investment at some point.
Mhm.
So I guess definitely as Tri-City Young Dems get more organized, they're about to have their next election June 8th. I would definitely make sure that they reach out to this group
Yeah,
to see if
please.
we can to see how they can work together and get some young people from Lee involved.
Yeah,
I know some out there.
there are amazing ones, and we just have to let them know that these seats are waiting for them and ready for them to get filled. So
Yeah, definitely agree.
thank you.
Welcome.
Clifton, thanks again for telling us your story and sharing your time with us. If you have anything that you'd like to leave with us in the chat, I'd like to encourage you to do that now. Otherwise, unless there are any other questions, I think we're gonna switch speakers at this point. So thanks again, and good luck.
Thank you.
Representative Cannon, it's almost 8 o'clock, so please tell us everything we need to know.
Oh boy, gonna be here for 3 days now. So, no, I'm a 68-year-old transgender woman. Let me start off with that. But I knew I was a transgender person since I was in my early teens. And I think that's the case for a lot of older transgender people, is they knew somewhere in their teens or early 20s. And the same is true these days, is that there are kids that know that they're transgender early in life. And there's a big difference between then and now. Is back then in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and even all the way up into the 90s, most of the cases, the families didn't want to believe that their child was a transgender person, and they really worked hard to make sure that their kids, if they were born male, that they stayed male, that they acted male. That was an expectation. If they were, and we've even seen it with girls that we normally put the classification, they're a tomboy. Some of them were transgender boys. Some of them were tomboys. Some of them were feminist gay women. and so there's all different variations of gender identity. And I guess that's what I want to say is that the challenges that many trans people fight with is really fighting with ourselves, because we're taught that society is male and female, and that's just the way it is. And growing up in that environment, especially in the 60s as a teenager, to realize that I was different, but I couldn't find anything else about what it meant to be a transgender person. There were only a couple of transgender people that were visible. And Christine Jorgensen, back in the early 50s, was probably one of the most widely known at the time, because hardly anyone knew that someone could be a transsexual, woman. And that was unheard of. And then the next big name was Renee Richards. She was a tennis player, and she was highly known as a transsexual person, and she was very visible and vocal. But to try and find any information about being transgender or being transsexual or gender differences, information didn't exist in the library when I grew up. And pardon as the dogs roll through here. I struggled with that, as I couldn't find any information on being different. And I knew I was different, but I struggled with that. For many of us, we fight with it, and we try to fit in our communities, in our home life, and knowing that there was always the chance that someone might find out our secret. And we'd have all sorts of problems. I grew up in a French Catholic family, and I knew that the Catholic faith would not be thrilled about my situation. So I kept quiet about that. And I tried to do what everybody else expected me to do as the oldest born son in a family. And I struggled through high school. I was a very lightweight, feminine boy. I was lucky enough. I had to put up with lots of taunts and people picking on me. In the sophomore year, I was 108 pounds. One of my gym coaches talked me into joining the wrestling team. So I wrestled at 105 pounds. I was a varsity wrestler. That saved my life for the rest of the year, because for the next 3 years, at 105, 112, and 118, I was varsity wrestler, and I held my own, and I was respected by the guys that used to taunt me because I was a wrestler. I sort of wish that back then we had the hormone blockers and things that kids have these days to be able to hold on to the gender they are, the gender identity they are, until they're old enough to decide whether they want to go on real hormone treatments. But I look back at my life and say, it's been pretty good. It's been really tough at times. I did marry, and we had kids, and I was hoping that what was going on with me would go away, but it didn't go away. I got great jobs, worked in the computer industry for over 30 years. I kept a secret during that time because during those, there were times when I traveled, I would cross-dress in my hotel rooms and stuff, and trying to grasp with what does it mean for me as a male person to want to be more female. And it got to the point where I was my own worst enemy, because I couldn't find out a whole lot of information about anyone like me. And it wasn't until the 1990s, that when the internet came out, that I found stories written on the internet. And I said, I could have written that story. I found other people like myself. And it opened the door for me, and it also opened the door for many others who struggled with this thing that we call being a transgender person or gender identity. We had been hidden because nobody wanted to hear about who we were or what we were. If anything, a guy who wore a dress was a drag queen. Or some were considered to be streetwalkers. They were there for a fetish for other men to take advantage of. It was really a low place to be. It wasn't a future for a transgender person. And I got to the point where I was thinking, I said, well, I'm having trouble with this. I'm actually feeling suicidal. I can't be who I am. And when I finally came out to my family, I was thinking at that time is that, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to come out and I'm going to lose my family and I'm going to lose my job and I'm going to be stuck out on the street. Well, I came out to my family and we hung together for 5 years or so, and then I got asked to move out. So I moved out, bought another house. I was making good money in the computer industry, I bought a second house, living there. And so I decided to come out full time at work. 2 months later, I didn't have a job. So I started my own carpentry business. When I lost my job, I was at Hewlett Packard, and I was let go, and somebody else was hired into the group I had been working on the same weekend that I left. And so I tried to find out in New Hampshire, were there any laws that would help me? And there weren't. The lawyer I contacted said there was nothing to help me. So it was always in the back of my mind that something needed to be fixed. In running my business, I got a call one day from a fellow from GLAD and from Ed Butler, representative from North Country. And he said they were working on some legislation, a couple of pieces of legislation. One was for same-sex marriage. The other one was to try and add transgender rights into our statutes for New Hampshire. And that's where I finally got involved. My face and my story was splashed on the pages of the National Telegraph, the Concord Monitor, and I became a public person. I went from someone hiding in the shadows, not trying to share with anyone what was going on in my life, to being out in public. I worked with quite a few people that in 2009 and 2010 to try and get this legislation through, and the same-sex marriage bill went through. The transgender bill, it got relabeled as the bathroom bill, and that was one of the first times. And you know, that bill got flushed down the toilet. So, but it gave me a good experience. I proved to myself and to others that I could go out and speak to anyone in the legislature. I scheduled time to talk with all sorts of folks in Concord. I even set up a table in the lunchroom, and I would schedule time to meet with other representatives and senators to come and have lunch with me and talk with me. So it was not unfamiliar for people to come down and see me there waiting to talk with someone. Or I would corner people in the hallways. And my big thing was just to educate people. I don't know why I'm transgender. I just am. And someone, I know people have told me, well, that's against God's law. And you know what? And I said, you know what? I'm one of God's children, and he made me the way I am. And so he must have a plan for me. So I'm just going to hang in here and be who I am. That time in the 2008, 2009, 2010 timeframe was the time of the banking crisis. I had a construction company. I did contracting work, and my business went belly up. I was visible as Gerri Cannon, a female carpenter. But that wasn't the end of my business, because most of my customers from back then still want me to do work for them now. I'm a finished carpenter, and people just love my work. I live in Somersworth now, and people want to pay me to drive to and from Nashua to do work for them, or drive to and from Concord to do work. That's like $100 a day I charge them for transportation costs, and they will pay it for me to come and work in their places. I never thought as a transgender person that I could ever be that visible. But it showed me that I could. When my business died, and that bill didn't pass that time, I needed to find something to do to pay all the bills I had with these 2 homes and the 2 kids finishing up high school. And I went on the road driving a tractor trailer as Gerri Cannon. I hadn't had my license changed from Dennis, but it was Gerri who was behind the wheel. And it was a challenging experience being a transgender woman, but also just being a woman driving a truck on the road. And many times I got accused by men of taking a job away from a man by being a woman on the road. And I thought it was so sad these guys are thinking this way, because I was just trying to make a living. And I remember a guy came up to me and says, "You're taking a job away from a man." And I said, "No, I'm trying to make a living." He says, "You ought to be at home taking care of your babies." And I looked at him and I was wondering at the time, should I tell him that I can't have any babies? And no, I looked at him and I said, "No, my kids are taking care of their babies." And I flipped my hair and walked away. Now, I did that for 5 years. I drove for 550,000 miles. I traveled all over the country. I didn't get a whole lot of many problems. There were people that were saying things behind my back. I knew from a couple other drivers that people were calling me that tranny driver. And I'd hear some conversations on the CB. But in general, it's not like I was in any one place for any great length of time. So I was glad I didn't get into a lot of physical altercations. And being in the truck stops, there's a lot of more stranger people than I. So I didn't have a whole lot of problems there. After 5 years of driving, I was getting into my early 60s, and it was time for me to get off the road. 5 years was plenty, and then find a new home. And so I settled into Somersworth. And a couple of thoughts came across while I was driving, but especially when I got back, is that during that time I'd been in Concord fighting for the bills, I had a couple of people approach me and asked me if I'd be interested in running for office. So I kicked that one around and I said, I can do that. So when I arrived in Somersworth, I didn't know a whole lot about Somersworth, but I found it had a gay mayor, Dana Hilliard. So I went and I saw Dana, because a lot of the other groups I was working with, the ACLU and GLAD and stuff, were pushing to have local communities support transgender people in the municipalities. So I went in and talked with Dana about putting together something so that Somersworth would support all their transgender employees. And he thought that was great. And I told him I was thinking about running for office. And he looked at me and says, you might want to learn a little bit about Somersworth before you do that. I said, we have an upcoming election for the local offices, and we could use a couple of new people on our school board. How about running for school board? And I looked at him, I said, school board? I know nothing about this. And he said, yeah, well, just give it a shot. I won that year by 6 votes. I beat Dana's partner by 6 votes. Sean's a wonderful guy, but it was funny. So I started working in the community on the school board. I learned a lot about Somersworth. I also learned that if you're in the right environment, where the community is conducive to accepting diversity, you can do anything. You can be a part of the community, a functioning part of the community. You can learn, you can grow, you can do wonderful things. And that's what I had done as a school board member. And the following year, I ran for representative. And I won there too. So, in fact, three women in Somersworth won, and we put out 3 men. Yes. And I found in the legislature, while there were many supportive folks because we had the Democratic majority, there were still a lot of old white Republicans that just didn't want to have anything to do with a transgender person in the legislature. But that was an interesting year because they had 2 of us, 2 transgender people in the legislature. And the two of us, Lisa and myself, Lisa Bunker and I, we were 2 of the 4 out state legislators in the country that were transgender. And up until this past November, it was just the 4 of us. And there's 9 openly transgender state legislators in the country. I think there would be more. A part of the challenges is still the thing that I faced, is that a lot of the older transgender people are hidden. They stay hidden. They're frightened. They don't want to be out in the open. They're afraid of what's going to happen to them. They're afraid to lose their families, lose their jobs. I'm in a situation where, yeah, that all happened to me, but I've survived. I found ways to live. I needed to find role models of people that could help through the process. That's what I'm seeing now as people are coming to me and to others. I said, you've become a role model for our kids, or someone that's in their middle ages. It's like, you've become a role model for me. It proves that I can be who I am and do these types of things or do anything I want. I've had families come up to me and thank me because now they see a future for their transgender child where they thought that everything was going to fall apart. Being a transgender individual is just part of life. Our communities, most of the people in the country still don't understand what that means. It's some sort of medical condition. They haven't figured it completely out yet, but it's diagnosable, and there are medical treatments. And everyone is unique, even in the transgender community. We all have different needs. But the biggest need is to be ourselves. The good news for me is that my family has come back. My ex and I see each other. We actually are happy with who we are. We're happy with each other. Are we going to move back together? No way. But my 2 daughters are my 2 greatest supporters. They're in their 30s, mid and late 30s, and I have 1 grandson, and I have 1 grandbaby on the way. So I still have family. I still do dabble in some carpentry. I'm a very visible state legislator. I am fighting for diversity of all forms in our legislature. I'm even working with the senators in Washington to change the support for non-binary people on all of the federal documents. I'm one of my first bills that I brought forward in the House was to add an X on driver's licenses for non-binary people. So it was my first bill, and it passed the very first time around. And it was implemented over a year ago in January of 2020. And so far, 71 people in the state of New Hampshire now have X's on their driver's licenses. And I think we can make a difference if we fight. And it's just like, and even like Clifton and Emily were saying, is you got to get out there, you got to be yourself, and you've got to raise your voice, make it different so that the people that come after you have a better life to live. So at this point, I'll ask, are there any questions for me?
Again, like I just feel like we're so blessed and lucky that everyone is sharing these stories with us. And I have seen you speak a few other times, and every time I just really appreciate you sharing your story so openly. And it's so hard to hate close up. And I think the more people see people as just human and people, you know, real people, it changes things. So I'm so glad that you're willing to be so brave and to lead in such an incredible way. So thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to know what you're going to do next.
I have 3 pages of resume, things that I've done. Yeah. I'm been involved with the United Church of Christ. I'm on the Open and Affirming Committee for the state of New Hampshire. So I've been working with each of the churches to really welcome everyone into the church. So that's another thing that's not on my list. I love the challenge of doing new things. Even when I still do carpentry work, but I like to do the very unique things that most carpenters won't do or take on. It's always a challenge. It's always fun. It makes my life fuller, being able to do things and then have someone be happy with the work I've done for them and treasure things. And as I've let people know that my carpentry is my art form. When I leave a project, it's something that they can enjoy forever. I think the same thing is true for everything I try to do, is to leave my mark and say, okay, I did the best I could. I've helped people the best I can. And if someone has something they want me to try and do, I'll try it. So
Gerri, for your carpentry business, do you have a website? Do you have a store? Do people just have to know you?
Well, if people look on Facebook for Cannon's Carpenter on Call, they will find me.
Okay.
They can look me up, Gerri Cannon in general, but I do have Cannon's Carpenter on Call is my business name. And I do, like I said, I'm taking on specialty jobs with the way the legislature stuff is going and the school board stuff is going. I have to fit my carpentry stuff in between the little spaces. And like right now, I'm dismantling an old hot tub for a friend in Rochester who wants it removed from an interior room that it's been sitting there for like 20 years. It hasn't been used, and now it really needs to be cut out of the room. So I've spent all day with dust all over the place.
Are you still on the school board too?
I am, and I'm running for my third term this year.
Wow.
Oh yeah, I've run for office 4 years in a row and won all 4 times. I'm going to run again for my 5th year, and I'll run again for state representative as well. For me, I get joy out of helping my community. And I found in living in Somersworth, it is the first community where I can walk down the road And people know who I am. They'll wave to me and say, "Hi, Gerri." I'll walk in for dinner and say, "Hey, Gerri, I got a table for you." I'll be walking through the market basket shopping, and someone will take me to the side and have a conversation. It's the most amazing thing in my life to be doing that when I was a person that even before I came out, I was a hidden, very depressed person. And I got out of the limelight. I hid in the shadows. I didn't want people to see me and see something that I didn't want to share with them. And now I just share me. This is who I am. I just happen to be a transgender person. I don't let that rule my life anymore. I do what I feel needs to be done. I have fun. I enjoy people in my community, and I want to help and I educate.
Gerri, I feel like with a winning political record like that, you should have run for governor last time.
Yeah, really. Please. That would have been awesome, huh? What's the secret sauce up there in Somersworth? I so envy what you have created together. And do you have any, I don't know, wisdom things you can do to help make people feel like stepping up? Might not be.
I don't know. I think part of it is I'm going to show that you can be in the legislature, you could be on a town committee or council, or whatever. You got to have fun. You got to have fun doing it. You got to find people to work with you on the councils or the boards, or even in the House or the Senate. Is find people you can connect with and have fun doing it. People you can confide with, people you can share your knowledge with. I enjoy working with David Waters. He's wonderful. I've known him for over 10 years. And there's so many other people that I've met and know that if I need to pick up a phone and call them, they can help, but we can also laugh and enjoy each other's company. And I think the same thing is true, especially true in Somersworth, is that the school board and the city council, we all work well together. The board and the council actually work together. We don't fight with each other. We involve each other in the budget processes. We work to find common areas. Our committees sometimes have people from both the council and the school board to make things happen. And
I want to know more about that. That's amazing. I've never heard of that.
Well, it works. So,
wow.
So we're not at each other's throats. Sometimes we have some disagreements within the council or the school board, but in general, it works.
Wow.
So, and I think then that helps when the rest of us go up to Concord. And for me, it really works out well because I have a real-time information from the community that I can take to Concord, and vice versa. I can take what's going on with Concord and bring it back, especially to the school board, and say, hey, you've got to raise your voices from the SAU perspective on these things. And I think it's to work together to make that happen. And at the same time, it's also work together to realize that there's things that aren't working in Concord, or they aren't working somewhere else that impact us, and working to find alternatives. You know, being creative, come up with other ways. You know, it's even if it's, okay, we're going to push that one off and do it in a couple of years when the legislature is different, or when the people we've got to work with. It's working it together. It's not just this is the only way it is. This is the way it has to happen. No, there's got to be a solution. I think part of that for me is I was an engineer in the computer industry, and since where there's a will, there's a way. And carpentry stuff, and it's the same thing. I would always go in, as a finished carpenter, it's like, okay, I got to try and build something that's going to tie into something that already exists. So you got to figure out how to make it work. Problem solving is the big thing. And then how do you build relationships with people to help address those things, and in the process make you successful so you can take on the next challenge.
Really good advice. Thank you.
It's a pleasure being here to be able to talk with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for telling us your story and sharing your time with us.
Great. You can ask me back anytime. All right.
Okay.
Well, have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
What a
Okay.
great evening this was. My
And,
goodness, we're so lucky.
With that, yeah, I think well, unless there's anything else that anybody wants to say on the record, I'm going to stop the recording now. So if you've got something, speak now, or hold your peace till next month. Okay. All right, here we go.